Hi, I'm Harry Rock, and welcome to another edition of the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. This is a special collaborative effort with Mike Squindo, Executive Director of the Westfield Senior Center, Tina Gorman, COA Special Projects Coordinator, and Pete Coles, producer of WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15. Our topic today is ticks, everything about ticks. And we're going to be discussing the danger of ticks, tick-borne diseases, including Lyme disease, and things that you need to be concerned about and worried about if you're going outside, but no reason not to go outside. And with me as my guest today is Dr. Bhatnagar, who is a member of the Westfield Board of Health. And the Westfield Council on Aging has partnered with the health department to educate the public about the danger of these tiny insects, which can be so dangerous. So welcome, and I'm just going to refer to you as everybody knows you as Dr. B.
Well,
You've been on the show before, so I was really happy to have you back again. Now that summer is here, people are enjoying being outside, which we all should be. They're hiking in the woods, they're working in the yards, they're going to the parks, but the danger of tick bites becomes a major concern. And the question is, should that concern stop us if we're using proper precautions and if we understand how to avoid ticks? So it's going to be a really interesting topic. So with that being said, again, really thrilled that you're here. And you're an outside guy yourself. You're a runner. You just did an amazing ultra-marathon road race.
In the trails.
On the trails, in the rain, I think it was.
Yep.
Pretty miserable conditions.
Yep.
So you were out with ticks as well, quite frankly.
Yes, indeed.
So it's something to be concerned about. But as we get kind of started with this topic, how many different types of ticks are there?
So, well, thank you, Harry, for having me on the show. I think it's important for the audience to understand more about ticks themselves, because when we are worried about something and we're scared about something, we usually end up having this fear. So I think knowledge is power, and the more we know, the less effect it has on us. So where does the word tick come from? The word tick comes from the original Dutch Latin, which means to pat, lightly or gently touch. And that's exactly what the touch of a tick is. And from an archaeological standpoint, these critters have been around for a long time. 500 million years is what we are expecting.
Wow.
And about 90 million years ago is when we first really saw the current form of ticks. So they've been around for way longer than we have, I guess. And there are about 900 species of ticks. And there are actually the taxonomy of it, right? The taxonomy is really broken down into two categories. You've got your hard shell and your soft shell. So your soft shell,
oh my gosh,
just to clear up that for a second, because that's just a sidearm of the taxonomy, it usually attacks birds and bats, and they're usually found in nesting. But that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with more hard shell stuff. And even in that category, you've got the deer tick, you've got the black-legged form, you've got the dog tick, you've got the brown dog tick, you've got the Lone Star tick, and a few others. But in our area, what really pertains to us is really the dog tick and the deer tick.
Okay.
And so those two are the main ones that we have to deal with.
Wow. I had no idea there were so many ticks out there. So, I did a little bit of research. So things that I was finding as I was looking into this topic, that deer tick, which as you referred to, the black-legged tick, that's the one that spreads Lyme disease. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right.
And then the dog tick is the one that spreads Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Right, or tularemia. The other two is that.
Okay.
So the thing we should understand first about these ticks is, how does it come about? So it's not really the tick itself. It's the bacteria inside the tick. So the tick will then bite either the host. So it's the deer, dog, or human, for example, right? Those are the top three. And the tick itself has either, when it comes to the dog tick, we're talking about Rickettsia rickettsii, is the bacteria, the spirochete. It's the bacteria that provides the illness of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Or in the case of Lyme disease, in the deer tick will have Borrelia burgdorferi as a spirochete bacteria. and that will then spread Lyme disease. So it's not just the tick. So that's why even though we look at all ticks and we can't tell when we look at a tick and say, oh, that's an infected tick and versus that's not a non-infected tick. That's why you have to treat all ticks as guilty until proven otherwise. and unfortunately, that's the case. And so when that ends up happening is that you really don't know which of those ticks, even once you identify it, is it infected with that particular bacteria, which will bring about the illness.
And so this bacteria is specific to the type of tick.
Correct.
It can't have the same bacteria in either the dog tick or the black-legged tick.
Correct. So the deer tick is your Lyme disease, dog tick, the Rickettsia bacteria giving about the Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Are both of these diseases, have they been attached to these ticks for a long time, or was this something that this is just something that they've always carried?
I think, a great question. I think the best way I can answer that has been for a long time, but we are just evolving our understanding of this. So, for example, deer tick, they are usually found in the wooded lands. Why? Because deers are found in the wooded lands.
Okay.
The dog tick is usually the one that's causing the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. That's usually in dogs, and that's usually found in grass open areas because dogs run around in grassy open areas.
Right.
So I think evolution has developed a beautiful mechanism to be able to spread the disease intentionally or unintentionally. Because if you think about it, we keep saying, oh, it's a disease. We think it's a problem. But in actuality, for nature, all it's doing is just spreading itself and evolving.
Right.
We don't like it for ourselves, therefore we call it a disease.
Right.
And otherwise, all it's simply doing is adapting to the best possible geographical environment to give it its best potency of being able to perforate and go out there.
And so if a person is bitten by a tick, they really can't determine themselves right away if it's a black-legged tick, a deer tick, or whether it's a dog tick. They've got to...
You've got to see. You've got to get it, and you've got to be able to examine it to be able to see what sort it is. And it depends upon the size, depends upon the shape, the color,
right.
And then those are some of the identifying markers to know, whether it's a dog or a deer tick. For the most part, both are really very similar in appearance, from the standpoint that both are almost reddish brown, the dog and the deer. So for our rest of our discussion, we're just talking about dogs and deer ticks. So they're very similar in terms of the color. The difference really is when you've got the black-legged deer tick, you've got a hard shell black covering behind the shield. It's like a shield behind the mouth. Now for the dog tick, it's a white shield.
Oh, okay.
So eventually the dog tick looks more like a pinto bean versus your deer tick that might look like, depending upon how engorged it would be.
Right.
It goes from a poppy seed, which is the nymph form, the immature form, to a more mature form. It can actually look like a small little seed.
Wow.
So it just depends upon what it is. But under magnifying glass and getting a better look at it, you really can't tell.
Right. Pete, do you have that image that I had sent you of what the ticks look like? Are you able to pull that up? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so there you go. If you see the black-legged tick, it's got that sort of shield on its back. Right. It's got black legs. The dog tick has got this white-looking shield on it. Right. It doesn't have a black one.
Yep.
So that's why you know it's not the deer tick. And the Lone Star, I think it's been named not because it's just got one little spot on it like a star, unless maybe that is what it is. But Lone Star, it's usually found more like in Texas and the southern areas. So maybe that's why it's called the Lone Star tick.
Oh, okay. Got it. And so to your point, these are mature size.
Right.
So these are fairly easy to see if they get on you.
Right. The immature size, almost the size of a poppy seed or even smaller.
See, that's what scares me
tiny.
Listening to that. So they're so small, you don't even know they're on you.
Correct. And if you're not wearing your glasses, you won't be able to tell even if it's on you.
Right. Some of us need our glasses all the time. And so that immature nymph has the capacity to bite you and transmit the disease,
right,
as well as being an adult.
Correct.
And when they're that small, how do you even spot them?
With difficulty. And that's why sometimes it's very missed. And the different stages of how and what a little insect like that is going to even do. Well, what it does, so the three phases. One is the attaching, the hooking. So first it cuts, then it will hook, and then it will then suck. And it's called something called a hypostome, which is a small little feeding tube that it puts in.
Oh, wow.
And then it just sucks the blood. But it starts off with this, it's called questering. So what happens is that they're sitting on vegetation, and while they're sitting out there, they start dancing with their front legs up. Then they start dancing and trying to capture through direct contact and then latch on to whatever it is trying to do. So they actually try dancing and
waiting for
and
something.
waving of some sort, and then they latch on, and then they do the cut, the bite, and they're not really trying to drill into the wound. They simply then put in a straw, the feeding tube, the hypostome, and then just suck the blood. Now, through that process, if they're infected, a tick, the bacteria will go through and then go into your bloodstream.
Are all ticks infected?
Nope, we don't know. Not all ticks are infected. We just don't know which one is infected if you are getting bitten.
Right. Oh, my gosh. Really interesting. So obviously then, if you're going outside, you need to be doing a tick check as soon as you come inside.
Correct.
And you're looking anywhere and everywhere. And to your point, the challenge of these nymphs of being that small, like a poppy seed, that's scary.
That's a challenge, right? And they can be in all different areas. Right from behind the ears, groin area, armpits, behind the knees. You need to look at in between toes, scalp area, hairline, arms, legs. So all over.
If you were to take a shower as soon as you come back, would that eradicate them, or is that one way before? I mean, will they immediately start trying to drill into you, or is there a delay before they do that? And taking a shower, does that help get rid of them?
I think getting a shower done and putting soap and water is one way of being able to get yourself clean and getting these ticks off.
Okay.
The key is not ever trying to splatter a tick, because if it's infected, it'll spread the bacteria out into the open. And then you'll definitely get that in. Now, therefore, if you do see a tick, try to get it off with a pair of sharp, fine tweezers, straight out, not twisting, turning, or doing anything like that. Or even if you do see let's say if you're wearing even a clothes and you see a tick on you, don't splatter it. Don't try flicking it. Take the shirt off. Try to get rid of the tick in that fashion, or try to use some alcohol to get rid of the tick. Soap and water to any area that's bitten to keep that area nice and clean. Because you don't want any other residual infection to get in through the wound. So soap and water is your best way of being able to keep things clean.
Pete, do you have that image with the tick with the tweezers I sent you? We could pull that up and just show. So that is
your deer tick.
That's the deer tick.
Right. It's called black legs. It's got a black shield.
Black leg. Okay. And that's obviously, and you can see the size of it relative to the tweezers.
Right.
And then hopefully you've been able to grab that before he grabs onto you.
And actually the thing about sizes is that, since we talked about that, is that usually the females would be bigger than the males, because usually they're trying to get more engorged, because they're just like mosquitoes. So interesting research about this. So it's only really female mosquitoes that will bite you. Male mosquitoes don't.
Right, I knew that.
So the female mosquitoes will bite because they need the blood meal, to be able to help them with delivery of eggs and developing of the eggs and so on.
Wow.
Similar thing even for the ticks in general. Even though both will bite, it's the females that we will see much bigger in size, because they're more engorged, because they are trying to take care of that blood meal for eggs and so on.
Oh, wow. So if you see a tick that's definitely, I mean, I've seen them on myself when they're really blown up, full of blood, you've probably got a problem if they're at that point. They've been really sucking away for a while. And so again, as you mentioned, basically ticks will locate themselves anywhere on the body, especially moist areas. But I just want to reinforce again, the back of arms, back of knees, armpits, groin, scalp, the back of the head, back of the ears, between toes. I mean, you've really got to do a complete check.
Right, a thorough tick check.
Right.
And the other thing is they are attracted to body odor,
Oh, they are.
They're attracted to body odor. They're attracted to sweat, so moist areas, the body heat. So they can sense, where the next victim is coming from. Ideally, it's one of those. Do you remember the movie Predator?
Oh, yeah. Right.
It's like the Predator. It's got this sort of infrared kind of signal, and it knows where you are because it's monitoring your body heat, body scent, and moisture, temperature of the body, things like that.
Right.
So it's a very sophisticated predator.
Well, you've answered a question to me because I was never sure. I said, when you're going through the woods or through brush, I said, how did they connect to you? And this was really interesting that basically their back legs are hanging on or attached to whatever their branch or leaf or vegetation, but the front arms or the top arms are waving around, just waiting for something to come by
and catch.
And they're going to catch. So that answers, wow, really, really interesting. So how soon, if you are bitten by a deer tick, which is the one that we're always most concerned about, how soon does it take before the symptoms of Lyme disease starts to appear? Is that immediate or does it take a little bit of time?
It may take some time. It depends upon the severity and what someone's immune system is like already. So it can take anything from 3 to 30 days to show up with symptoms. Your early phase symptoms in hours to days could be just a little rash. And eventually what I tell patients is to look out for something called a bullseye. So it looks like a bullseye and like a target. And it's an outward sort of bullseye. So and it's not even small. Sometimes it gets bigger.
And it does grow.
It does grow.
Inside.
So you need to take a look for those kinds of findings. And then you might just feel feverish, flu-like symptoms, some aches and some pains. But then again, aren't those some of the similar symptoms if you've gone for a big major run in the woods or going for trails, right? You might have some aches and pains and stuff after you've gone for all that anyway. So sometimes those are mistaken.
Right.
And then later on, the worst symptoms are more arthritis in all the various joints. Then people can even have things like Bell's palsy, things like nervous system issues, memory issues.
Wow.
I have seen, from my end, from a cardiology standpoint, I have seen the heart disease area where people have advanced heart blocks. So pacemaker may have to be put in, even if it's temporarily, as long-term complications. And usually if it's Lyme disease and somebody looks like as if they need a pacemaker, we usually will temporarily put the pacemaker or just do supportive care while they're in the hospital, blast them with antibiotics, see if they can respond and get better, and kill out the infection so that their electrical activity gets better too.
Wow.
Rarely will they need a permanent pacemaker.
Right. But if someone has been bitten by a tick, should they see a doctor right away or go to an emergency room or get some kind of medical assessment of them, or do they wait until they see symptoms occurring? Or
I think you can wait, but what you can do is the first thing is if you can get that tick and keep it and put it into a little plastic bag and store it, because in case you develop symptoms, then you've got that tick to be able to send to the lab for evaluation.
Right.
So I think the labs departments had all discovered and said, this is too much for you to send us every single tick. So if you're developing symptoms, then send it to us, then we'll do an evaluation. Otherwise, you're just going to overwhelm the system.
Yeah, right.
And to that point, when you, after you've stored it, and let's say if you immediately have a reaction, sometimes people can have an immediate reaction, just like a mosquito bite, and suddenly the whole everything just blows up. Those are things you need to go and get looked at immediately. Otherwise, stay the course, simple, straightforward, soap and water, keep the area clean and dry, and make sure you're very well hydrated, things like that. You can boost your immune system with things like vitamin C and so on. But that's in case of the immediate acute infection.
Right.
Keep the tick. If you develop symptoms later on, then seek out more care. Or if you're getting worse.
So a lot of times people are out walking with their dogs in particular. They'll let them off leash and the dogs are running around and stuff, and they get into brush and grass and they're rolling on the ground, doing all of that. Dogs obviously pick up ticks pretty quickly, and you should always do a tick check when they come in. Can people get a tick? Will a tick transfer from their animal to them?
It's quite possible, because the fact that that's how we are getting transmitted from dog to human is because we're touching the dog.
Okay.
And it's not even just by them just being in the same room, but we have to touch them, because they need to have that. It doesn't fly over or jump over. It has to be direct contact for the tick to transfer from dog to us.
Right. And so I'm just thinking about this because I've got dogs in our life. If a dog is in the house and you haven't detected ticks, those ticks could get off onto, because dogs are always jumping on the sofa, chairs or whatever, even beds. Ticks could then get onto the furniture. And
theoretically, but I think they would want to stay on the dog.
They're going to stay with the host.
Right, they're going to stay with the host because the host is nice and warm.
Okay.
It's got nutrients ability, and it's got the ability to be transported. If it knows that it's going to be sitting on a piece of furniture and it might become cold, there's no nutrient, and it may not go anywhere, there's no point of that. So from an evolutionary standpoint, they'd rather stay with the host until they can find a better host like us.
Right. It's interesting. My wife is always, she's the gardener of the family, and she's always working on her flower gardens and stuff. And she always does put on long socks and long pants and all that. And when she comes in, she'll take all that outer clothing off and just leave it on the kitchen floor and then do a kind of a tick check. And just the other day, she had taken her pants off, and they were on the floor, and all of a sudden I see this black thing walking on the floor, and there's a tick. And then another friend of mine was just telling me this story, because I was telling him I was doing this interview, and he was sharing with me that he has some game cameras on some property he owns, and he was going out to check them. He said, Harry, I only went out 150 yards and then came right back. He said, I had 6 ticks on me by the time, and not a very far distance. It's just how prevalent they are, and especially if it hasn't been a very cold winter, because I guess it's the cold that finally kind of kills them off.
Right.
But
if the temperature has been above 45, 50, they'll thrive. But if it's below that, they won't.
Wow.
So that's why we haven't had a very, very cold winter to knock them and kill them off.
Right.
And even the last couple of years, we haven't had that. So that's why they're still being quite prevalent.
Right.
But usually between spring and fall is their time period, but spring and summer is when they really start maturing. So you've got the nymph phase between May, June, July, and then the adult phase really a little later on in the fall phase.
And they are sought after by other predators, turkeys or other birds, animals are looking for them, so it's not like they're going uncontrolled, but they're a food source for other animals.
But if we kill off all the turkeys
that's true.
for Thanksgiving time, then their predatory advantage changes.
Right. Yes, true. Yeah. That's very, very true. So I think part of our message should be that just because it's summer and ticks are more active, people shouldn't not go out. They shouldn't just say, oh, I'm staying in my house full time. We still want to use the out of doors and stuff. So a lot of us want to go out and hike. We want to, get out into the woods. We love nature and stuff. Are there any tips that we can give people to make them comfortable with the fact that they can go outside?
So number one is just go outside. That's the first getting over the fear, getting through the front door.
Okay. And you agree with that?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And the other thing is, but make sure you're prepared. So you can use, there are lots of agents out there, the permethrin, DEET, things like sprays and things like that. But you can also end up looking to see for more natural ways of being able to do this. So there are more organic solutions that you can use instead of using DEET or permethrin. Because remember, your skin is a organ. It will keep absorbing everything that you're putting onto it. Whatever you put on, it will be absorbed. And if you put more toxic chemicals, you're going to be absorbing all those toxicity as well.
Interesting.
So it behooves you to go and look for more natural ways of doing that.
Okay. That's a great point.
And also, as you mentioned earlier, was keeping your long sleeve shirts, wearing hat, and then long sleeve pants, keeping your long socks, or so that you've got a double layer underneath your trousers, a longer pair of socks, right? If possible, put your pants into your socks.
Into the socks, so
right?
they can't crawl
can't
up,
get in,
right.
Be careful on trails. Make sure they're open trails. Make sure that you are not rubbing against brushes all the time. And what else? Even in your back lawn, right? You just make sure that you've got the grass all the way down. You don't have too many bushes. They're too close by where you're going to be, things like that.
So even in a lawn, if your grass is cut and you keep it fairly low, you can still have ticks
Of course.
even there. So it's not just because it's cut grass doesn't mean they can't find a place to thrive or looking for you. So wow.
It's just that, for example, like the dog tick, right? The dog tick is more in grassy land. So you've got bigger grasses uncut. They're more likely to proliferate.
Right.
But if you've reduced their home environment by bringing the grass level down, you're going to have a better advantage.
Do you happen to know, and I know I'm asking this off the cuff here, is there clothing, I don't know if L.L. Bean or any of these other companies, do they produce outdoor clothing that has some kind of insect, what's the word I'm looking for, spray or something on them that keeps ticks from wanting to crawl on them?
I've heard of this, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I know that they've got clothing that is a tick repellent because it's just the way the surface is. It's harder for it to try to latch on. And also, those are easier for you to just spray on without damaging or bringing in that chemical onto your arm or anything like that, because it's on that surface of that jacket and so on.
That's a great point.
That way you can always use that jacket and you're not bringing it infected into the house.
Yeah, it's your tick jacket,
if you think about it, the moment you start putting any of these chemicals on, now you take that thing off and you put it into a regular wash, you're now infecting all your other clothes and stuff too. So you've got it's a
That's a
wider
great
issue.
point.
It's a bigger issue altogether.
It is a bigger issue. So basically, and I know my wife does this with her outdoor gardening clothes, it's the same clothes she wears all the time. So that's a great point. So if you're going to spray yourself and stuff, those become your outdoor clothes. Don't mix them with your indoor clothes and just leave them separate. That's a great point. And the other thing I want to talk about with clothing, is it better to have lightly colored clothing so the ticks are easier to see if they're
That's a good idea.
light colored clothing versus even a little nymph or something?
You can see something better.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you see in terms of size wise, you've got your deer ticks, which are smaller than dog ticks. The dog ticks are actually almost double the size.
Right.
So dog ticks are more visible.
Okay.
But your deer ticks, which are smaller, may not be.
Okay.
And it also depends upon the stage in which they're at, whether it's a nymph or whether it's a mature.
Right.
But you know that the smaller ones are most likely going to be your deer tick, and your larger ones are more likely to be your dog tick.
Okay. Interesting. And if people see a tick crawling on their clothes, is it safe to assume that the tick is still searching for a spot to engage? It hasn't probably bitten them yet.
Right.
Is that a safe?
Yeah.
So at that point, can they just flick it off, or should they keep it? What should they do? If
That's a very good question. What I would do if I saw that, I mean, the first reaction for anybody, I mean, we can have this beautiful discussion here, but in the reality of situation, what's someone going to do? They're going to go, and they're going to flick it off, or they're going to do this. We just don't want them to splatter it and kill it on the skin, because that's going to then splatter and cause the infection. Infected or uninfected, it'll still cause an issue. So you just don't want to splatter.
Got it. Right. Interesting. Very interesting. And as far as repellents, we've talked about DEET. That's probably the most common one that people are familiar with.
Right.
Do you think that's the most effective one, or there?
I don't know. I've not looked at every single one, but I would say that there are others.
There are others that people should look.
Look for other stuff as well.
Okay.
Don't go just by the first thing you say. It says on the thing. It says, most powerful, repellent or whatever. Look for other options as well. There are plenty of organic versions that you can find for yourself.
Next question, and this is one I definitely want to spend a little bit of time on. If a person spots a tick on their skin and the tick has burrowed itself in, what should they do? What is, at that point, should they be finding tweezers to try to pull it out?
Yes. So find a pair of fine tweezers, grab that tick, and just pull it straight out. Don't try twisting it. Don't try squishing it or doing anything. Just straight tug and pull it off.
Now, I've always...
And then put it into a little plastic bag. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I like that, right.
And to store it.
And save it, especially if they've bitten you. I've also often heard that you have to be careful that the head doesn't get pulled off because the head could still be attached. Is that a wives' tale?
It's sort of, but you never know what you're going to be getting, right? What if you're just pulling off a leg, right? You really don't know. So you kind of do as best you can, grab the whole creature and yank it.
Okay.
And then afterwards, clean that whole area with soap and water.
Okay, right. And keep an eye on it.
Right, keep an eye on it. You can then use alcohol to first clean it out, then use soap and water, and then clean up the whole area.
And again, within 3 days, you should start really looking for
Right, 3 to 30, but
3 to
usually
30.
3 is when you start seeing a rash, and it expands accordingly.
So I remember as a kid going through Boy Scouts and all this kind of thing, they had all these things. You got to watch out for ticks and stuff. They always said, put some kerosene on it, some petroleum jelly, nail polish, a hot match tick on the tick that'll force it to come out, or, and again, what was the other? Vaseline on it, it'll smother it and it'll force it to come out. Are those wives' tales? Are those not to be considered as methods by which to get rid of the tick?
I think maybe they've been used in the Old West at some point when they didn't have other means to be, or even tweezers for that matter. They probably didn't have tweezers in those days.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think those old methods may have been effective for some people, but you can't go through the efficacy of that or the skill level of whoever's doing it. So the kerosene can cause irritation. The petroleum will be able to make everything less malleable to be able to go catch that tick if you really want to, because now you've got all this goop all over the place.
Yeah, right.
So, and then you put nail polish, now you really can't see what you've got.
Right.
So it makes more of a mess. So in the hands of an unskilled person who has not been doing that particular technique for their entire life, I would say just take a pair of tweezers,
Let's
take it out.
stick with the tweezers
Right.
and try to
That's
pull it
easy.
straight out.
Right.
Straight out. Oh, that's good. And are ticks more active? I think we've kind of got that answer. They're more active in the summer, but they can be active in the winter.
Correct, and even at nighttime, especially if they're smelling, somebody's walking around, body odor, body temperature, and the ambient temperature is above 45, 50, so they're more likely to be able to then attack and stay active. If you get good freezing temperatures, now you're killing them off.
That's an interesting point, because how many of us go outside at night? There's going to be a beautiful moon. We're watching for the space station to come across. We're watching for, shooting stars and that. So what we do, we sit down on the grass. We're sitting down, laying down, looking up.
Yep.
And I never thought about the fact that, there
Yep.
definitely could be ticks down there, so you better be doing a tick check after
Tick
that.
check afterwards.
Yeah.
Yep. Enjoy the experience, but do a tick check after.
And generally your head is even on the grass.
Correct.
Oh my gosh. And at night, I never thought about that at night, where you assume that it's just, they must go to sleep at night.
And even other times when we're just walking on the grass, right? And that's how it goes in between our toes. Or if we're just walking on the grass, or just lying on the grass and having a lovely day at the park, right? Lying there on the grass. Tick check.
Yeah. My wife tends to go out in her open-toed sandals when she's out gardening and stuff, and I'm always on her not to wear those, because I think, to your point, it really should be a closed-toed shoe for full protection, because if it's just a sandal type of thing or flip-flops, there's no question they can get in there, and that's a great spot for them. They've got immediate access. They're out of viewing sight, and they're pretty protected once they get between those
the toes.
Toes. So,
right.
Wow. We talked about it earlier, but the long-range impact, and I've heard people talk about Lyme disease, and I've met people, they call themselves Lymies or something like that. It's pretty bad.
Yep. There are entire support groups just for Lyme disease, because it can get pretty harrowing.
And if it goes, so if a person is bitten and they've got symptoms, is it easier to fight off that bacteria and that disease at that point versus it going on and becoming more embedded into the body? Is there a certain point where if you've got it, you've got it, and there isn't a lot you can do about it?
And that's where building your immune system is very important.
Okay.
If you've got a weakened immune system, it's more likely to go into rampage mode and then take over the nervous system. If you remember when we talked about in the last interview, the more you are able to attack the nervous system and take control of the nervous system, you hack it, now you're heading into trouble. So the less something can intervene and hurt you through your immune system, hurt your nervous system, then less likely the complications.
Yeah.
So that's why people get with Bell's palsy and things like that, is because the nervous system is weak from whatever else is going on.
Okay. Yeah. It's all starting to make sense. But I was surprised to hear that ticks could be active in the winter, because we assume that because it's cold out, they can still be active. So if it's above 32,
yep,
they can definitely...
Yep. Definitely, if they are 45, 50, 50. Above that, they will thrive.
Right.
But below that...
And, those are the temperatures in the fall when we're out leaf peeping and we're walking down the trails and we're looking, it's just gorgeous walking out in the woods, and it's chilly, but it's not freezing yet, but it's chilly. So you really need to be thinking about ticks then as well.
Right. And if it's chilly and you are roaming around anyway with trousers or track pants and then long sleeve shirts, a jacket on top, you're already covered. For the most part of you is already covered. You really only need to then check hair, back of neck, ears, things like that.
Right. And then as far as people's yards, as trying to make them tick safe, I'm not sure they're ever tick safe, but as we mentioned before, really keep grass mowed, keep things trimmed up, get rid of piles of any leftover leaves from the fall. Any places where ticks could really congregate or hide and with long grass or grassy type of plants and stuff, they climb up those, right, to gain elevation so that they know where they're going.
But however, since your wife is a gardener, I'll be sharing another little interesting secret and tidbit on this. So if you can fortify your garden space with things that ticks don't like, such as thyme, citronella, you grow lemon bark, you grow eucalyptus, you try to grow lavender, and you have all these surrounding and intermixed here and there, you'll have less ticks. Why? Because they don't like ticks. I mean, the ticks don't like those sorts of plants. So that's your natural way of being able to deter as well.
Now that is fascinating. I did not realize that certain plants are not conducive for ticks. So
on that point, let's talk about for a second about what chemicals you're using, right? We talked about DEET and permethrin and so on. As you know, I'm a holistic cardiologist, so I always look for a natural way of doing things as well, in addition to the other way of doing it. So one method is if you can find essential oils, such as eucalyptus, citronella, lemongrass, lavender oils, essential oils, then you can use a carrier like coconut oil or almond oil and then apply that on. So mix the two together and apply that. You stand a better chance. You can take apple cider vinegar and water and spray that. You can even take lemon slices and you can bring those to the boil after cooling and after 24 hours. Put that into a spray bottle and then spray that around. That will also help because it will deter your ticks because they don't like it. They don't like anything citronella.
Really? That's interesting.
My son's gone for camp and everybody was saying, no, on the list, make sure that you've got DEET, permethrin, and all that stuff.
Right.
We made up bottles and bottles and bottles of this kind of stuff and gave it to him. So he's using that.
So all of you parents out there who have children or grandchildren going to camp, this is a great tip. I didn't even think about going to camp because obviously they're outdoors all the time.
Yep.
They're hiking, they're sleeping out under the stars, they're sleeping in tents. Wow, those are some great tips.
So for this year, for the remaining summer, all my trail runs and everything that I'm going to be doing what I just mentioned to you.
Right. Wow. Well, I think we have exhausted this topic. Is there anything else you can think of that we haven't talked about or that people should be aware of?
Just be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
And go and enjoy nature.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, what I would say, Dr. B, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. And best of luck to you with your trail running. And you're outside fighting them off just like we are. So that's a good sign that you're out there. But I think that what you've heard here is that summer, not just summer, but in the fall and in the winter, ticks are definitely active. We now know that they crawl up plants and they're kind of dancing around looking to grab on anything that might be walking by. They don't jump. They're looking to grab onto things. If you see them, try to remove them immediately. Make sure that you clean the areas. If you have been bitten, make sure that's been cleaned off really well. Watch for any symptoms. And if you do show symptoms within 3 to 30 days, I think it was, go see medical care immediately to start that intervention process as far as getting treatment to fight off that disease, because you don't want it to go any further. But bottom line is, don't be afraid of going outside. This is summer. We want to go out. We want to hike. We want to enjoy the great outdoors. We want to garden. We want to use our yards. We want to take our animals, our dogs particularly, out for hikes. Watch out for them. But just be vigilant. Make sure you're doing your tick checks. Make sure you're wearing the proper clothing. Make sure that you are providing every opportunity to stop ticks from gaining access to your skin, and then always do a really thorough tick check when you're done. So with that being said, make sure you get outside and enjoy this beautiful summer weather that we have. I want to say thanks to our guest, Dr. B from the Westfield Board of Health, for being on the show and helping us to helping educate us on the dangers of ticks and tick-related diseases, especially Lyme disease. Don't forget that this program will broadcast on cable channel 15 every Tuesday and Thursday at 2:45. So if you want to watch it again, you're able to do so. And we do also save it as a YouTube program to our YouTube channel. And you can go to the Westfield Senior Center. They've got a full listing of all of our shows that we've been doing over the last 5 years. Special thanks to Pete Coles, our WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15 producer, for his support and making this show possible. And so on behalf of Pete Coles, Mike Squindo, and Tina Gorman, I'm Harry Rock. This has been another edition of the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. Thanks for tuning in on Cable Channel 15. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show. Thanks.